April Norris. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. Of course, they make me crazy. If you're watching this, you'll see that my little doggy is right there. He's always by my side. And if you're listening, well, just know I have a medium golden doodle named Vix, and he's always there right with me. So, anywho, last week, author and comedian Dave Mowry joined me, and I hope you got to enjoy his episode. He lives with bipolar, and he also wrote a book entitled OMG, That's Me. And it blossomed from a bunch of blog posts that he did, and then he gained like a huge following from it. And I love his mission. His mission in life is to, well, use humor to tell his story, also to shatter the stigma of living with a mental illness by making it comfortable to talk about the uncomfortable. So if you listened to last week's episode, you heard us mention that he trained other people struggling with a mental illness to do stand-up comedy. And that we were going to play some of their acts for you this week, which I'm super excited about. And that's about what's going to happen coming up here, okay? So Dave is from Portland, and that is where everything took place. So I'm going to set up the comedians for you because many of you are listening instead of watching on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And so some of you might not really get the full humor kind of listening to it. You will, but I want to set some stuff up for you. So we're going to start with Dave himself, okay? And he has a line in his portion that says something like, those of us with a mental illness even share a special handshake. And he's got his hand out there, and it's like, it's trembling up and down. And so that's really what that means, is if you've, seen, like I've dealt with it with my mom and some of my other family members, their hands, when they just get going, their hands are shaking. So you'll have to envision that. It totally makes the joke. And then 3 very talented women follow him, okay? So Margaret is going to be the first one that kicks off by talking about growing up with a mother who was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. And by the way, I have 2 other podcasts about that. It's a very fascinating disorder, and if you want to learn more about that, like, how to recognize it and things like that, you got to check those podcasts out. But she is so funny. So she steps on stage wearing this tiara that she must have made herself. Totally full on her head, chin up, yeah, just hysterical. And so she steps out on stage and she teases that she suffers from PDQSD. You're like, that's a lot, April. Well, it stands for post-drama queen stress disorder. So she's a hoot. And then second up is Maeve, who works in the mental health field and lives with anxiety. And then she also talks about being a lesbian too. And she feels that buying a girl a drink is a whole lot cheaper than the copay of her therapy. So she's got a lot going on too. And then to round out these talented folks is Lorraine. Now, she's an older woman. I don't think she would argue with me about that. She comes out like in a little, pushing like a little, gosh, what would you call it? Like it helps her walk. It's like almost like a little, walker. And so she says she takes so many meds to remind her that she takes a med rather to remind her to take all the other meds that she has to take. So it's super fun. I'm super grateful for Dave and his quick-witted friends. They just, when you think about the trials, guys, that they have been through, and then they can get up on stage and, make light of them, it just shows how strong they really are. Even though they're suffering with a lot, they are still so much more stronger than what many of us are in regards to talking about our struggles. And yes, they might struggle, and they might have caused their loved ones a lot of scary shit scenarios, but how many of us could get up on stage and poke fun at our this pain. Not many of us, right? So I really hope you enjoy. I'm going to leave you there, and I'll say goodbye to you at the end.
You can see why she inspires me. So, I have bipolar disorder and severe anxiety disorder, and so with that, I noticed discrimination where other people don't. Take happy hour, for instance. I think that's being discriminatory. There should also be a crappy hour for depressed people. And bipolar people could go to both. And one of the medications I take for my bipolar disorder is notorious for weight gain. And true to form, when I started taking it, I gained 40 pounds. Well, I decided to do something about it. I joined a fitness club. I joined 24-minute fitness. I screwed that one up. I joined 24-hour fitness, and in my case, they called it 24-minute fitness. Well, I started doing the treadmill, and I realized after a little while that the treadmill was a perfect exercise for someone with a mental illness, because you do the same thing over and over, and you never get anywhere. And the other day I was working out, and the guy next to me looked over and he said, "You're not going very fast." I said, "That's okay, my mind's racing." And I've been thinking about it. I think there should be a dating service for people with a mental illness. I can see the postings now. Paranoid white male seeks paranoid white female to share compound in Idaho. Or paranoid female seeks male with no government connections. Or my favorite, multiple personality female seeks multiple personality male for double dates. And actually, I've had, obviously with bipolar and anxiety, I've had some ups and downs, some really hard times, and one of those I decided to try to give electric shock therapy, electric convulsive therapy a try, ECT, and so I did. So I went to OHSU and did the treatments, and it was great, it really helped. But one of the side effects is short-term memory loss. And so after the treatments, I'd be going to the grocery store and end up at the pharmacy, or I'd be going to the cleaners and end up at the library. I even forgot I was married. So maybe it wasn't so bad after all. I love you, dear. Yes. So, but being mentally ill is not all bad. It's kind of like being in an exclusive club. We even have our own handshake. What else? So when I was first diagnosed, my kids were young, and we sat around the kitchen table and we talked about it. And the next day, my daughter Megan went to school. And she was in art, and she was drawing. The teacher came up and looked over her shoulder and said, "Megan, that's interesting. What are you drawing?" And Megan said, "Well, it's a bipolar bear." And the teacher said, "A bipolar bear? Can you tell me about it?" And Megan says, "Well, it lives at the North Pole, it eats fish, and it takes Prozac." But when I went into the hospital, my wife took me to the hospital. When I went into the psych unit, she took me in, and when I got there, I was confused. I didn't realize where I was, and on the second day, I met with a psychiatrist. And I thought it was a hotel, and I met with the psychiatrist, and he said, "Well, how's it going?" I said, "Not too bad, but the service here sucks. I ordered a margarita when I got here, and it still hasn't arrived yet." And he said, "Oh," and wrote something down in his pad, and then he says, "Well, do you know where you are?" And I said, "Well, my wife said it was going to be a surprise. I'm hoping St. Thomas." He said, "No, it's St. Vincent's." I said, "Oh, is that the Caribbean?" But this is the most important part of my set. This is the audience participation part. So I'm going to ask some questions like who, what, why, and you guys have to say who or what or why. So the comics down here know the program, they'll lead the way. So when I was in the psych unit, I did notice some things. Like, why do they keep the doors locked in the psychiatric unit?
Why?
There's so many people trying to get in. And what do people in the psych unit do for exercise?
What?
Rock. And where do most injuries occur in the psych unit?
Where?
People fighting for position in the medication line. And that's just nurses. But really, the bipolar disorder would, I'd have my highs and my lows, but there was also the stable times, but with the anxiety, it was constant. It was always there, and that was the worst. Anxiety was the worst. And one of the ways it manifested itself is when I would go in, have to go to the bathroom. I go into a restroom, public restroom. If anybody else was in there, I just couldn't go. I tried, but I just couldn't go. And so I'd have to leave the restroom and go out in the hallway, sometimes for 5 minutes, sometimes for half an hour, whatever it was, before I could go in there and it was empty and I could go. And then last week, Heather and I were at the theater. We went to a movie, and afterwards, I went into the restroom, and there were people in there, and I went up and I went to the bathroom, and it struck me how far I'd come. So I stepped back from the urinal and I raised my hands and I said, "Yes, yes, yes!" And the other people in the restroom looked at me like I was crazy. I said, "No, not anymore." Good job, Molly. Our next comment is Margaret. Margaret's natural comedic skills are a consequence of maladaptive behavior caused by being raised by a crazy person. She can say crazy even though it's not politically correct because she earned the right after a lifetime of suffering. Please welcome Margaret Puckett.
My mother ruined my life. She has borderline personality disorder. And if any one of you have had the misfortune of knowing someone who's a borderline, you'll know that their sole purpose in life is to make other people miserable. She was so mean that it just made me want to tear my hair out. So when I left home and went to college, I joined HPA, Hair Pullers Anonymous. And the meetings are confidential, so I can't share with you everything, but you have no idea where some people pull out their hair. I learned some really important life skills from my mom, like how to be mean, self-righteous, vindictive, judgmental, which came in really handy when I became a teenager. But it's really going to come in handy if I ever become a talk show host for Fox News. Now, one thing about borderlines, they have this special ability to sense your weaknesses, and they'll humiliate you where you're just completely flattened by it. And so I was eventually diagnosed with PDQSD, which stands for Post-Drama Queen Stress Disorder. And one of the treatments for that is that I get to wear a tiara. And my friends have to bow every time I enter the room, and they're really getting tired of that. Borderlines are also known to be really manipulative, and they're really skilled at it. But one thing I learned with my mom is that it was really easy to manipulate her if I used over-the-top flattery. In fact, I could get away with saying just about anything. And it went kind of like this. seen in my entire life. I didn't know they made them for cloven hooves. So, borderlines are really, really narcissistic, and they crave attention. And they crave drama. And my mom would do anything to get attention, no matter what it was. And it would go like this. You all hate me. I know you hate me. One day I'm going to kill myself, and then you'll be sorry when I'm gone. And I'm like 9 years old. And I'm thinking, oh, the daddy could marry a nice mommy. So I used to pray for God's mercy. Oh, Lord, please send a bolt of lightning. Or a meteor. It doesn't have to be big, just about this big. Or duct tape her to a chair and make her watch days of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Maybe some of the niceness would rub off. Now, borderlines also blame everyone for whatever happens around them, even if they're the one who's the guilty party. So it's like this at home. No, Mom, honestly, I didn't take your razor. I'm only 9 years old. I have nothing to shave. Or, no, Mom, I didn't lie to the lady next door. I repeated exactly what you said about her. Now, my brother and sisters, we were all pretty messed up. We had our own messed up way of coping. One of my sisters learned to evade our mom's attention by impersonating our cat, which worked surprisingly well, except for the litter box part. And then my brother became really, really accident prone. And this was on the road and in bed. And even well into adulthood, he's still known for wrecking women and getting cars in trouble. Now, my problem is a genetic predisposition to evil. So, matricide was always an option, but I thought it through. I realized I wasn't scared of a lifetime in prison. What scared me was meeting her in hell. You know, in prison I'd feel safe. I'd get my self-respect back. I wouldn't have to live a lie like I did with Mom. Because when the guards would demean and humiliate me, I wasn't obligated to love, honor, and respect them the rest of my life. So, last year, my family got some really great news. Mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. I was so relieved because they gave her these drugs that turned her into a nice person. It was a miracle. It was also faster and tidier than exorcism. So I've become a total believer in drugging people into happiness. It actually helped me forgive and move on. And I thought, you know, this would be helpful for mankind. You know, it should be put in the water supply. Or it should be bottled and sold on the grocery store shelves. You know, and I can see the ads now. Don't be mean. Drink Sertraline. Thank you, everyone.
It's a lot harder to come out casually now that I'm single. So instead, if someone at work asks me what I did over the weekend, I'm like, I made out with some random girl off the internet. So another interesting thing about Clackamas County is that whenever I tried to come out by referencing my girlfriend, other women would start referencing older ladies would be like, oh, like I got, like went shopping with my girlfriend, got lunch with my girlfriend, and then they went home to their husbands. And so like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with polyamory, I was just really surprised. For real though, like she's not your girlfriend if her tongue's never been in your mouth. Is doing peer support, and peer support is basically like hanging out and like talking about how crazy you both are. And so one thing I found about doing peer support is like a lot of people are afraid I'm going to judge them, like particularly for like smoking weed and casual sex. And that concerns me because like, you know, I really want to like gain people's trust and like create this like safe, like non-judgmental space. And also, do I look that uncool? Like I know I'm like getting older, but like do I look like a soccer mom? I've heard of weed before. It's okay. So like I mostly do peer support with other queers, which I absolutely love. Until I hear like the 6 words that like every peer support specialist reads. So I saw your OkCupid profile. So the queer community in the Portland metro area is very small. Basically like everyone knows everyone. But so far I've been pretty lucky with queer peer support. Yes, it does rhyme, because I do like that. I would say like definitely less than 25% of people I'm working with are actively sleeping with one of my exes. Which is like better than I expected. So the worst thing about lesbian first dates is that like the conversation always eventually turns to your ex-girlfriends. But like she really hurt me and I have a lot of feelings I need to process, so I just feel like buying a girl a beer is cheaper than my therapy copay. So I went on a first date recently, and she told me that she takes a Xanax to get high. And I was like, oh yeah, like I sort of do that, but I take it so I can like continue grocery shopping. Fun too. I had a panic attack at New Seasons. And then like just being in New Seasons the next time reminded me of having a panic attack. And so I started panicking every time I walked in. And then they raised their wine prices. And I had to go to the emergency room. So now I just go to Fred Meyer instead. My therapist asked me how my anxiety was impacting my life. And I said, well, it's really limiting my access to like organic, vegan, gluten-free baked goods. So I recently started seeing a new therapist, and she says I shouldn't base my self-worth on what other people think of me. And I'm really, really trying to work hard on it because I really want to be your favorite client. Thank you so much.
Well, how are we doing so far? Are we doing okay? Good. Our next comic is a very special person. She's been doing the Stand Up for Mental Health with us for about the last 3 years. She is an inspiration to me, and she is just laugh out loud funny. So please welcome Lorraine Dilly.
I was born in 1951 as a 1.5-pound preemie. I spent my first year of my life in an incubator up at Denbrecker, and I died several times. But I kept coming back. And for this life, seriously? Seriously, I look back and there were signs. One time when I was in high school, we went on a retreat to Mount Angel. I was bored, up alone, and mind racing at 5 a.m. And I wanted to have some fun. So I climbed up the bell tower and grabbed the bell. I wrapped my hands around one side, my legs around the other, and started swinging back and forth until it made a noise. Gave a new meaning to the word bong. Dysfunctional is an interesting word. Dysfunctional. I think a lot of things about dysfunctional, but fun is not one of them. It should have been disasteful, because whoever first spelled the word is an ass. Once when I was in the state psychiatric hospital, my roommate wanted me to help her escape, so I obliged. She asked me to push her out the window. Well, she was a big gal, and this was a small window. But finally, I pushed her through. Too bad we were on the 8th floor. It worked out okay, though. She landed on her head. After she bounced right back up, she took off running for the fence. If she could get over it, she was free. There was trouble. Right when she got to the top, her clothes got caught on the wire. It didn't deter her, though. She fell over the other side, buck naked. Began singing her rendition of Born Free. Today, I have PTSD, bipolar, and anxiety. That means that on a good day, I'm incredibly depressed with a sense of dread for having a panic attack. Bathrooms, where are you? I wear pull-ups for the times when a bathroom is far, far away. I keep getting tickets for going too fast. I was going 100 miles an hour down McLaughlin. Then I pulled over and puked. Still got there on time. I'm much better writing jokes when I am manic. Of course, they don't make sense until I'm depressed. I take a lot of meds. I have morning meds, my nighttime meds. I even have a memory med to help me remember to take my meds. I attempted suicide with aspirin. It wasn't effective, but my headache was gone. I went to the ER because my mouth was tasting like bleach. I worked for 16 years with industrial bleach. The nurse said, "Well, damn, have you been drinking bleach?" I said, "Yeah, right, every day." "Of course not." She assumed I drank bleach because of my mental illness. As an advocate for myself, I reported her to a supervisor who washed her mouth out with bleach. She stopped swearing. When I saw her the next time, she was much nicer to me and her tongue was really clean. I used to be a survivor and not a fighter. I lived my life quietly for years. Many people make decisions for me. And then at 30, a great doctor finally helped me find my voice. Unfortunately, my voice sounded like Darth Vader. My family didn't know how to take that, so they left me at the hospital and went to get a gag order. Now I'm a survivor and a fighter. My name is Lorraine, and hear me roar.
Did you think they were so cute and fun? I hope you know, because I know many of us that, if you're living with a mental illness or you're living and loving and caring for someone with a mental illness, it takes a lot for us to be able to laugh about some things. So I hope that you were able to at least get some giggles out. So next week, because I sure did, next week though, I'm going to share some mental health tips for the holidays for you, okay? So did you know that this time of year can trigger those who are living with bipolar, schizophrenia, depression, just to name a few, all right? So a National Alliance on Mental Illness study shows that 64% of people with a mental illness report that the holidays can make their condition worse. I've experienced that. I've seen it with my mom. So I'm going to share some tips on how we can save our own sanity when caring for them through these very touchy times, okay? So I'll see ya, or you'll hear me next week.